Welcome to our November 18th meeting of the Equitable Economic Recovery Task Force for Contra Costa. For those of you who are listening for the first time, if you're watching a recording of this, my name is Kristen Connolly. I'm the Executive Director of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership. And this task force is being co-led with the Contra Costa County Employment and Human Services Department and the Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board. And so the three agencies are working collaboratively in this effort to work on the very important issue of how can we have a more equitable and inclusive, sustainable economy as we work through and get to the other side of this pandemic. So we do have someone new today that hasn't participated before, David Green from the who's part of the Contra Costa County Library Services, the head of the Adult Services Department. So appreciate that he's here representing the library. We had a meeting yesterday about the ways that the library can be supporting this work. And so I'm excited. So thank you for taking the time to join us, David. Excited for you to be here. We've got two main objectives today. We're going to first provide just a very brief economic update and an election update as it relates to what we're trying to do. And so Lindy and I are going to tag team on that. And then at 9:15, we're going to go ahead and do an introduction of focus groups. And we're going to have Steve Schultz and Donna Van Wert do that together. Donna, I'm so thrilled you're able to be here. I had updated it, taking your name off the slide last night, so hadn't had a chance to add it back in today.
I'm not doing much anyway. I'm to defer to Steve this morning, just so y'all know. Thank you both.
Okay. I did just want to, the first version had you both on there. And so really that's the heart of the matter. So by 9:15, we'll get to that. We will be staying as a large group today and not breaking off into the smaller focus groups, but we're hoping to have a pretty robust discussion after we hear from the three presenters that Steve is going to introduce. To really hear about impacted community members and what the pandemic has meant for small business. So then we'll spend a few minutes talking about future meetings and the direction of the task force at the end. So are there any questions about the agenda or any of our, okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and dive right in. So I'm actually gonna pass this first part over to Lindy to talk about Measure X.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Lindy. I'm part of the CCEP team, for those of you who are new or are joining us on recording. I just wanted to talk quickly about Measure X, which, thanks to Mark's great graphic here, you can see passed by about a 58% margin. Measure X was a sales tax measure here in Contra Costa County. It primarily is going to, or has been discussed as, being allocated towards healthcare, early childhood education, and fire services. However, being a general sales tax, that wasn't part of the measure. It was a general sales tax and will go to the general fund. However, these are the things that supervisors here in Contra Costa County have really advocated for and said that they think those funds will be needed for. There's actually a meeting today with the group that worked on the needs assessment and was part of putting this measure together to talk about what an oversight body might look like. And that's something that the current Board of Supervisors is exploring. They do all plan to create an oversight body, but exactly what the makeup of that body will look like and some of the details about what that body's responsibilities are is still being worked out. So if you're interested in talking more about that, happy to do so, or to give you some more information about what those conversations look like. But we're certainly excited to see that Measure X is passed and is moving forward. Kristen, you want me to handle these ones too?
Sure. Or I was gonna, I can impose on Leslie, who's here, who could talk about this more specifically about what it means for San Pablo. But this was a sales tax put on the ballot to increase it for a short duration, 0.5 for 5 years, and then reduce it to just 0.25 for 5 years. And you can see on the slide in terms of how much money per year this would mean for the budget, and that city leaders are hoping that this really can help with public safety and youth services as two key investments. This was endorsed by the East Bay Times going into it as something that was really seen as essential for the stabilization of the city budget. So Leslie, just to totally put you on the spot without actually having told you I would do this, do you want to say anything more about this measure for San Pablo?
This is my life. This is hilarious. Yeah, this is actually the outgoing Measure Q. This has been vital for us. We're actually one of the groups. So it is, you know, they do invest in youth. It's not just, it's youth services, youth leadership. It's really cool. The Youth Commission comes through this. There's a lot of public safety, more around school resource officers and the connection to our community, because we have community-driven policing. The Community Police Academy. Some really cool things actually have come out of this. And then San Pablo EDC, everything that has to do with getting the disenfranchised to work. This complements anything that comes through WIOA. So really San Pablo residents have access to far more funding than anybody else to get into this. And it also supports our businesses. So a lot of the education and training we do and the technical assistance gets funded through this measure. It's been fantastic for us the last several years, and I'm actually really excited. It's how a little tiny city like San Pablo, without big box, without big business, actually makes it through.
Awesome. Thank you. See, you always come through when I put you on the spot. Well done. So, but yeah, it passed. You can see there. Then we're moving on to Measure V in Concord. So again, this is, if you're looking at how close this is and you see how tight this margin is, there will be a new update on Friday about vote counts. It is holding on by the slimmest of margins. And similarly to what Leslie was talking about, this is the former Measure Q in Concord. It was known as Measure V. Again, it would move the current sales tax. It would basically double it and generate $27 million a year. And there's no sunset for this. And so the only way that this goes away is if voters voted out at some point in the future. So that's some serious stabilization for the economy in Concord. And they really do, they have a pretty terrible pavement index. And so the city leaders are talking about the need for road repairs. So we'll keep an eye on that. It does look like it's gonna squeak out a victory, but there's a number of city council races and other things that are being decided by just the slimmest of margins, 50 votes here, 100 votes here, and that kind of thing. But this has huge ramifications for the city of Concord with such a small margin. So just wanted to let you know about that. And to Lindy for the statewide measures.
So many of you likely voted on these. I hope all of you did. But we wanted to just talk about a few in particular. Prop 15 did not pass. This would have changed Prop 15 would have changed Prop 13 and allowed for reassessment on commercial properties. Again, that has failed. We at EBLC, the sister organization of the CCEP, were supportive of Prop 16, which would have allowed for affirmative action in government decisions. It also would have changed how affirmative action works in certain higher education institutions. So there was a lot of support from those higher education institutions for Prop 16. However, it did not pass and is not moving forward. The margins are here on this slide if you're interested. Prop 15 was a little bit closer than Prop 16, which lost by a more significant margin. I'm just going to do a quick announcement. If you can put yourself on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. It just helps us not have any background noise as we're making these presentations. The last one we wanted to talk about was Prop 19. This is going to have some ramifications for sales tax, for property taxes that come into the counties. We'll see exactly what that means as the next year or two play out. But the major changes that Prop 19 moved forward is that it will allow for, if you were over 55, or if you're severely disabled, or if you've been displaced due to wildfire or some other disasters, you'll be able to take your property tax assessment into another county. And generally that used to apply just within the county you already lived, and you had to go to a home that was of lesser value. Generally you had to size down. However, that's no longer the case with this new Prop 19. It also closed what is considered a loophole that allowed you to inherit the property tax assessment of your parents on rental property or grandparents on rental property. That will no longer apply. So if something is inherited, but it is a rental or income generating property, that loophole will no longer be there for you to allow yourself or whoever's inheriting it to keep the property tax assessment. So those are the three that we wanted to cover. Going back to you, Kristen.
we did have a partnership board meeting on Monday, and Donna was there. And we heard from city officials, from city managers, from 4 of the cities. And they were talking about that in general, their revenues are down, but not as significantly as projected. That they are getting a larger part of this county pool that in terms of internet sales. We won't dive into that today, but there are certainly going to be some big benefits to budgets from these new sales taxes that are passed. There's been a small uptick in business licenses in terms of some entrepreneurship in pockets, but they don't have a sense yet for the businesses that aren't going to make it because of the pandemic. And so there is this real push to try to help small business leaders, hence the important theme of today. Permits for building have slightly increased. And so there's a lot of home improvement projects happening, which is also reflected in some national data. And so we're going to continue to make sure that the work that we do here as a group is trying to support those efforts. Contra Costa is back in the purple, as many of you know, which means there's more restrictions about what can be opened. Indoor dining won't be allowed. There's a lot of activities that are going to be scaled back because of the concerns related to this. In the interest of time, I won't dive into all of this, but it is important as we think about all the different pieces coming together related to schools reopening and childcare. Thank you, John, for being here again today. There are so many pieces to the puzzle that get more complex as the COVID pandemic reaches new highs that are particularly alarming. So in moving on, I did want to just highlight some data that was out just yesterday about retail sales growth, that it's slowing down. And so there is a concern that there are a number of retail establishments of all sizes that are just holding on to get through the holiday shopping season to try to recoup as much as they can, and then are going to shut down, which is really, really concerning. And so the pace of growth has really slowed. And so it's something to keep an eye on, and it's particularly relevant to the economy, locally. I will say, in a conversation yesterday, the chair of the Economic Partnership, Alex Marin, had a conversation with Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, and they talked about the importance of getting folks who have been displaced in the economy connected with workforce training, with all the things that we have been talking about in this group, because there is a real concern that without additional federal intervention, a lot of what are considered the temporary layoffs will become permanent. And yes, there has been a strong recovery in many sectors since the worst of the initial shutdowns in the spring. Again, it's a very uneven economy. And Chairman Powell talked about the need to really be thoughtful and work really hard with the members of our communities that are lower income and really facing the disproportionate impact. So it just really, the conversation yesterday about where the economy is going, and so I will say construction is an important part, and that's what cons means. I believe. And so it's really important to keep an eye out. And there were big new housing starts today, and seeing some new housing starts that we haven't seen since 2007. And there's definitely a preference to single family over multifamily as you look at the data nationwide. And that certainly is bearing out locally in what we're hearing from developers. But we've talked about it just about every month, that residential housing construction is going to be an important component of our economic recovery locally, as well as nationally. So anyway, so I'm happy to open it up to questions. Very mindful of time. I could talk all day, but it is 9:15 and I want us to keep on track. So any questions for me? Okay, then I will pass it to Donna to open up the 9:15 portion. Take it away, Donna.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I really just want to introduce and let our speakers today share with you. So one of the side things that we have been working on, and I say side, but very important piece, is to make sure that the voices of those most impacted are heard, and that we listen to their advice, their valuable advice, as they're going through the reality of what's happening right now because of COVID. So we hosted 2 focus groups. One was focused on employees, individuals that were laid off or impacted, and the other one focused on small businesses. What was the impact on their businesses? So our presentation today is really their voices sharing with us what the real concrete impacts have been on their businesses, and hopefully we'll listen and take some advice from their perspective about what's happening and what might we be able to do to support them more strategically and more in depth going forward. So that's really all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Schultz with Glenn Price Group, who has helped guide us through this and foster this for us. And so he will take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. I am going to share my screen. Okay. So as Donna said, I'm Steve Schultz. I'm a senior associate with the Glenn Price Group, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the participants from the Small Business and Entrepreneur Focus Group that we held in October. The purpose of that focus group is to give input to the task force on the experience of small business owners and entrepreneurs in our county during the pandemic-related shutdown, and also particularly to talk about things that would be most helpful in providing for an equitable recovery. Our focus group included 7 participants who were invited to join by task force members. So Spark Point, Contra Costa, San Pablo Economic Development Corporation, Rubicon Programs, and Opportunity Junction all issued invitations to people to join the group, and we had quite a diverse array of businesses. So diverse by size, we had some sole proprietorships, and we had other businesses with up to 10 participants. We had the businesses that were diverse in terms of how long they'd been in operation, some that were relatively new, some that were more than a decade old, and diverse in terms of their experience of the economic shutdown. So one business in particular, it would happen to be a bicycle shop, has had an increase in business. It's not really common, but others that had been shut down almost entirely. And then we had a diverse array of sectors. So we had personnel staffing, fashion design, food production, IT services, property management, bicycle sales and repair, and a chamber of commerce. The announcement that you got for today's meeting had attached to it a list of the questions that the group addressed and kind of themed responses and bullet points. So these were the questions. In case you haven't had a chance to look at that document, I hope you will. But we asked, what specific impacts to your business have occurred as a result of the pandemic? If your business is still open, what do your prospects for the future look like? What strengths and innovations have you been able to draw upon to sustain your small business in the face of the current challenges? What kind of government and other support have you received to help you sustain your small business? And what barriers to accessing support have you experienced? What kinds of additional interventions and support should the government and other sectors be promoting to maintain the continued financial success of small businesses like yours? And then what's the most important thing the members of the task force should understand about the experience of small business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself during the pandemic? So we're pleased to have 3 participants from the Small Business Entrepreneur Focus Group with us today to talk about their particular experiences with their own businesses and what an equitable recovery would look like in Contra Costa County. Each is going to talk about the challenges that they have faced related to the pandemic downturn, and then offer a call to action to the task force related to the challenges. And I do want to note, as Kristen said, we're suddenly it was just on the front page of the paper today, we're in a new round of restrictions on business activity related to the surge in COVID-19 cases in the region and across the nation. So it continues to be a really challenging time. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tiffany Berry, who has a menswear clothing line called Double Consciousness. So Tiffany, why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. Jim, Joe, Jose, and myself, we are really happy to be a part of the small business entrepreneur focused group. I'd like to also thank SparkPoint for referring me to Stephen Schultz, who has done an amazing job organizing our thoughts for us. I'll be speaking about providing resources and investing in small businesses. The challenge is that many small businesses have reduced operations or their work is totally on hold, or at least for the moment. All businesses have had to make significant changes in their operations to remain viable. In my case, this is true. My business has been on hold since March of this year. Because most of my manufacturers were overseas, I was hit with the effects of the pandemic before it reached the United States. At that time, people were still speculating on whether it was a real threat and if it would have little or any impact on the fashion industry. And it did. As we all know, there are many small and large designers and retailers that have not survived. I was told in January that production of my designs would push back due to reduction of the workforce because factories needed to comply with their government health and safety regulations. Because of this, the factory pushed back my development numerous times and failed to meet my delivery dates. Luckily, I was able to negotiate a portion of my manufacturing costs, but the majority of the time and money spent developing my designs was lost. The call to action is that small businesses need resources and investment in order to reorient their business, identify new customers, and work differently. Small businesses need support for innovation and seeking new ways to deliver and develop their products and services. Programs such as loan forgiveness and grants need to be prioritized for small businesses that lack access to capital. In my case, this is also true. I was unable to rebound after losing a portion of my manufacturing costs, and because samples were never created, I could not meet my financial obligations to present at local trade shows, schedule and conduct photo shoots, and even redesign my website for online purchase. I was encouraged by other fellow business owners to apply for the PP loan to, get access to capital. But at that time, I had lost a job that funded my business, and I did not trust or feel comfortable with the loan repayment options. They weren't clear enough for me. So I won't talk too much on that because I know Jim and Jose will kind of touch on that later and give you more insight on how businesses need support during that PP loan process because they did benefit from it. But I will say this, I've been blessed to be able to fund my business debt-free by saving my money from freelancing and having access to startup capital from IDA matching grant programs sponsored by SparkPoint through Mechanics Bank. SparkPoint has been instrumental in my personal and professional, I call it financial education. They've been there to help me in a lot of ways. Through these types of programs, businesses are small like me get an opportunity to just start and hopefully grow. That's it.
Thank you, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
That's great. I really appreciate your comments. I forgot to mention one thing at the beginning, which is there will be a time for questions, and so if you could put your questions in the chat if they occur to you as our focus group participants are speaking, we'll go through those, and that's how we'll do the question and answer session. So thanks again, Tiffany. Our next speaker is Jose Vega. think you're on mute, Jose.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Sound great.
Okay, awesome. My name is Jose Vega, and I own and operate a small catering business and sell my unique brand of gourmet pupusas at local farmers markets. I also do private catering events for individuals or companies, and obviously that part of my business has been totally non-existent this year. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share with you our experience. And my hope is that it sheds some light as to the needs of small businesses in our county. I have been in business for approximately 8 years. I've also was one of the participants in the match savings program through SparkPoint a few years ago. This kind of programs is awesome because it provided much needed funds that helped me acquire much needed equipment at the time. As we all know, the number one obstacle that people like me face in the real world is the access to funds. I have also used the expertise available through the Concord SBDC numerous times and participated in several seminars that have been imparted by them. All this is valuable help, which helps people like myself turn our business ideas into a reality. One of like I said, one of the biggest hurdles for us is the availability of cash when needed, or whether it's to grow or even just to start the business. This year has been particularly hard on small business, as we all know. Many of us has been forced to stop operations at the very least have seen our income drop considerably due to the lockdown. I was not able to work for almost 5 months for two main reasons. My sole employee was diagnosed with breast cancer earlier this year, and I also, the other reason was at first, when we first went into lockdown, I sell at 3 farmers markets, and I usually cook on site, but I couldn't do that at the time because there was not allowed anything, concentrating people allowed and all that. I was able to kind of reinvent my the way I sell my pupusas by what I'm doing right now is pre-packing and vacuum seal them. So when I take them to the market, all they have to do is take them home and heat them up. And that's how I've been able to start operating again since late July. In the meantime, I was fortunate enough to get some help from the state, and also I applied for the PPP loan. But I found that loan was very confusing. Anything pretty much that comes from the federal government, it's not based on a reality of a particular segment where it's just meant to be useful for everybody around the country. And a couple of friends of mine, for example, told me that they wouldn't take the loan because the last thing that they wanted to be is in trouble with the feds, just like that. So a lot of small business owners don't really trust the federal government, and in my opinion, that's why they prefer not to even deal with them. Small businesses and entrepreneurs need help, especially now that, as it was mentioned, the rise of cases and more and more counties moving back on regulations related to the pandemic. These funds can be in the form of loans or grants, and it has to be dealt in a way that it's easy for the business owners to understand the terms. Our easiest point of contact is at the local level. I mean, if you think about the way the people from SparkPoint, for example, know me, they have known me since mine was just an idea, as opposed to somebody sitting behind a desk in DC that's just writing stuff, has no clue who I am. So the local level, they are the ones that know us, that know our needs, and they are aware of our situation. So we have to make business owners aware that help is available in a way that it's easier for them to understand, and that's where the centralized help comes in. I think I'm gonna go off a little bit off script right now, and also mention something that it's personally I find it extremely important. The help that it's needed right now, not necessarily should be it's only funds. There's a lot of mental help that needs to be dealt with. There's a lot of people like myself. I have a family, I have bills to pay, I have this and that. The mental part, I'm lucky enough that I know how to deal with it, but there's a lot of people that are not aware of anything out there and are dealing with a lot of stress, and stress is creating a lot of backlog. So I think that it's also, and Jim's going to touch on that a little bit, so hopefully it's something that we will take into consideration. To end up, our call to action is small businesses need access to funding, accompanied by clear information on the terms of that funding. As I said, cities, counties, and nonprofits need to provide education and coaching to help small business owners identify resources and access them. There needs to be a single place that small business and entrepreneurs can go get the information they need, and a solid marketing effort that lets them know where to look for help. So hopefully it's going to take a large effort on everybody's part, but hopefully we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I thank you so much for the opportunity, and hopefully our input will be of help to you guys. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Jose. Our last speaker is Jim Hammock. Why don't you take it away, Jim?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you again for having us. Great job, Jose and Tiffany, my esteemed colleagues. I am the CEO and chief nerd of a technology and web marketing company called Nerd Crossing here in West County. I also want to thank my good buddy, Leslie Choi, for encouraging me to join the small business focus group. I believe she now owes me a virtual lunch. We'll talk about that offline. The work we did with the small business group was, like Steve mentioned, a very diverse group of businesses. For me, it was personally very enlightening to hear what other folks, as well as inspiring to hear what other small business owners have done during the pandemic. And to Jose's point, I really would encourage us as a task force to really think about other ways to support businesses, not just financially. Just getting together with the group, to hear what they've done and to learn from them makes us all realize that we are truly in this together. And small business owners are resilient. We'll find a way to get through it, but just being part of that support group, whether there's a way that we can pull business owners together on a regular basis just to support each other, I think is a very powerful thing. So keep that in mind as we try to get creative about ways to help other businesses. So my company has been in business. We're about to celebrate 10 years. We've been blessed and fortunate actually to be Business of the Year twice here in West County, one for the city of Richmond and one for the city of El Sobrante. We, like many other business owners, were preparing for the next economic downturn because we had such a great run, right? There had been a good 12-year run of just the economy going up and up and up, and what goes up must come down. So I think most responsible business owners, for the last couple of years are just kind of bracing for something. Of course, we weren't bracing for a pandemic, but things like paying down debt, streamlining operational efficiencies, automating, innovating, diversifying your client portfolio. All those things were what we were doing, of course, before the pandemic hit, which put us in a good position when the pandemic hit. We did take a hit, just like everybody else, except for our bike shop down the block. But, fortunately, we being in the technology space, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a peak because, many of our clients, which are businesses, literally had to create a virtual workforce overnight, right? So now suddenly with the shelter in place, so the March 17th, 8 months ago now, we had to help these clients find a way to access their systems from their home, right? So there's a little bit of a spike for us, but then, we definitely took a hit. We weren't, as bad as a lot of our other retail colleagues or hospitality colleagues or travel folks, but, we had to make some adjustments. So whenever there's a little bit of a downturn, you have to cut costs, right? So that's one of the first things you do is revenue's down, cut costs accordingly, right? And the easiest way to do that is to look at fixed costs and, of course, staff. Fortunately, we didn't have to go through layoffs or furloughs, but I know a lot of our colleagues did, and I really felt for them. And then this wonderful thing called the PPP loan came about. At the beginning, it sounded great, and it was great. It worked really well for us. It was intended to pay for payroll expenses and some fixed costs like rent and utility. But as both Tiffany and Jose said, and as all you guys know, there was just a lot of uncertainty around what those guidelines and rules were for this money. And we all know that there's no such thing as free money in this world. And us business owners do everything we possibly can to not incur more debt. That is the last thing we want to do. So when the loan came out, I was fortunate to apply for it and actually get it in the first round. And a lot of that I owe directly to the fact that I had a great relationship with a local regional bank, Mechanics Bank, where at the same time, I would hear from my other friends that had businesses that had Bank of America or Wells or JP Chase, and they were like, I have no idea when I can apply. I'm not sure when I'm going to get funded. So that touches on the equitable part of any financial help down the road. But I got it, and in some ways I almost felt guilty because I got it in the first round, because here I have my restaurant friend that's like 80-90% down in revenue, and they're barely able to make it. But there is still just no certainty around whether there is even going to be another round of PPP loans, right? But fortunately there was, and we got through it. And then after we got the PPP loan, the question for business owners is, okay, now you got it, what do you do with it, right? And a lot of that is because you don't know what the rules are in terms of repayment. In fact, I was supposed to start my repayment of my loan this month, and because the rules have shifted, it's been pushed out a little bit. But some of us business owners are very hesitant to spend that capital because they're not sure how much of it's actually going to be forgiven, right? So going forward, any financial grants and loan forgiveness programs really need to have some clear guidelines initially, right at the beginning, because as many of you guys know, that also shifted as well. The rules changed from 8 weeks to 12 weeks. The percentage changed from 75% to something else. But being in the first round, I had the money, and I said, okay, well, I don't have the business necessarily to bring all of my staff back to pre-pandemic levels. But I wanted to follow the guidelines of the loan because number one, wanted to make sure I could make sure my employees could work, and number two, I wanted to make sure I could hopefully meet the requirements so that it would get forgiven. So I brought all my employees back, even though we didn't have all the business, right? So that was obviously a big challenge, which as we think about other future funding efforts, whatever flexibility we can build into it would also help as well. So here we are with money. We have employees back. We don't have the business, and then now the government's throwing the extra $600 a week for unemployment benefits, right? That was another challenge for a lot of small business owners because you want to bring your employees back, but there's a subset of employees that were making more money being on unemployment, right? So there was a little bit of a challenge there getting some of those people back to work, especially during the pandemic where they were like potentially risking their health. And as we go into more tightened restrictions, that's a concern going forward too. So, you know, part of what the focus group talked about is as we look at, or the task force looks at ways to fund and help small business going forward, let's not just look at businesses or just use one financial metric. A lot of focus on, there's been a lot of focus on, say, businesses that have had a decline of, say, 50% or more year to year. We would argue that there's a lot of businesses that have done an incredible amount of work this year over the last 8 months to build a very sustainable business model that, you know, maybe they're down 20 or 30%, but they're running the leanest they've ever have in their entire history. And those businesses are probably more primed to really come out of this pandemic and continue to, you know, give back to economic growth in their communities than some of these other ones that are going to have some greater challenges with the revenues being down so much. So we wanted the task force to just think about that, think about other financial metrics, also to get creative. You know, loan forgiveness programs are great, grants are great. You know, finding ways to help offset fixed costs like, you know, rent is great. But maybe there's ways that we can help incentivize or reward employers who have really cut costs and expenses and also have kept their employees on staff during the pandemic and are going to continue to do that going into 2021. So those are some of the ideas that we had. We don't have the answers, of course. And then lastly, as Jose said, you know, whatever we can do to bring small businesses together to really share best practices and you know that we're in this together, I think is also a really powerful thing. So I'll pause there and pass it back to Steve.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks to everyone for your presentations. I think very powerful and strong, you know, just really, I guess I was really moved just being part of the focus group. It's one thing to read the statistics about what's happening to the economy, and it's really different to hear people's personal stories. We have about 6 minutes for questions, and I'm looking in the chat. Don't see any yet. A lot of comments of support for our speakers and appreciation. So I hope you guys are reading those.
Well, Steve, if I could, that was just terrific. I mean, really, really helpful. Want to join everybody in the chat who is saying that, but I would love for Tiffany and Jose and Jim to potentially go a little bit deeper just on that last point around what it would look like to so really 2 points, what they think the kind of, if there are metrics to use that are more helpful, what might those look like or should we abandon metrics? So I just love to go a little deeper on that point. And then also talk about the way you would recommend that we design these support groups and mentoring and networking, or however you want to call it, to help small business owners navigate this, because I just think that's a really important point that we should make sure we execute on. So I don't know if you want to dive into either or both of those points.
Yeah, I can start and then my colleagues can jump in. I mean, in terms of metrics, this is the challenge, right? Because we don't want the funding of resources to be like the SBA loans, which are really hard to get, right, for small businesses.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you need to have 3 years of healthy financial records in order to get a loan. I mean, but I think there does need to be some rigor around like what makes a company financially healthy and sustainable. Right. And there's things you can look at, right? I mean, one obviously is debt, right? You see if a company is over leveraged, do you want to give them more money? Maybe not necessarily, right? And just looking at a 1 year track record doesn't also necessarily mean that they're they're financially healthy either. So maybe 3 years, right?
Mhm.
So those are my suggestions. And, obviously looking at sales revenues and how they're handling, costs in terms of staffing but that's going to take some rigor and it's going to take some expertise at the local level and more work to like really dive into those financial reports. But at the same time, you don't want it to be prohibitive and a barrier for businesses to apply for them either.
Right.
Right. So that's the balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Tiffany or Jose, or on the question of setting up support strategies and training and coaching and.
If I may, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please go.
Like I said before, our local nonprofits that have worked with us that know us.
Mhm.
And obviously they know how to get a hold of us.
Right.
It takes sometimes a lot of courage to come out and say, you know what, I'm going through some difficult times right now. But if we know that this organization can help us deal with it, it's a lot easier. So I think that Jim said it, even us talking to each other without really knowing each other, that was in a very strange way very healing for us during these times. So I don't know, maybe have seminars where people can come and share their problems. I know for a fact that depression is rampant through these troubled days. There's small business owners that are not paying their bills, that are worried sick. It's affecting their relationships with their spouses, with their children. It can have a snowball effect.
Right.
It's not just that they're losing their business; they're losing a lot more than that.
Yeah.
We have to be able to identify those areas and somehow help these people. One of the lessons I've learned during the last economic downturn, I was doing real estate. So obviously for the first time in my life, I wasn't making any money. I didn't make any money for over a year. I lost all my savings. I was losing my house. I was losing my marriage. I was living in fear. And one of the things I learned is that living in fear requires a lot of energy. And you can put that energy to good use. And that's what I did. I became politically involved in the struggle of homeowners that were losing their rights and dealing with banks. And all that fear, I transformed into something positive. Well, people need to know this, that they can do that. And just like me, I found a way of selling my product when I was not only dealing with the pandemic, but with a sick employee. Then I realized, well, what if I vacuum seal them and prepackage them and sell them like that?
Yeah.
I found a way back. And I think we can help people like myself find their way back if they're somehow lost right now. And a lot of them are. So thanks.
I think for me, having programs like that IDA matching program, which I got years ago, actually. Like I told you guys, I funded my business through freelancing, and I tried to stay out of debt as much as possible. I was pretty much debt free, but I had programs that matched my savings, 2-to-1. And it took a long time to get there, to get enough capital to get the business going. But I think what needs to happen is we have more of those types of programs with larger matching amounts. Do a rolling program every 3 to 6 months and offer people, creatives, to come in and get some business training and coaching. I will say with my IDA program, they made us do extensive business courses. We had to come to class for a month, 2 hours it was amazing. I mean, I thought it was very intensive, but after you got the money, you didn't really get any follow-up. So would it be possible? And I'll say this because we didn't get, I don't want to say it as they didn't help us, but what I will say is they offered us the money. They spoke to us about our business. They required us to have a business plan. They required us to have credit coaching. They required us to have all that education. But after that, it was really hard to navigate to get more money, right? To start a business and have a startup alone is a lot of work and energy and funding that you need. But like I said, if you could roll it over, maybe do it twice a year and offer some sort of assign a business, a coach in a way that would sustain them for at least a year to help them work and figure out how to get more money, how to manage what they have. And I know that requires a lot of resources, and you're local funded, and you have government funding and you have private sector funding where you get this money for these IDAs. And I understand that, and it's not a lot of people and resources. But if you could maybe keep a capsule group of maybe 10 businesses and assign maybe 2 businesses per business counselor or coach, maybe over a course of a year, you can track progress, see how they did with the money, see if the business failed, see where they can make more strides in sustaining a business. Does that?
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. No, I've been taking copious notes, and I got, yeah, no, this makes so much sense. And one more follow-up, Tiffany. Do you think that it's, you mentioned creatives. Is it helpful to have like-minded entrepreneurs like you in the design space together, or being cross-sector? Is that okay?
You know what? I'd say, well, yeah, of course, I would never deny your own people, you know?
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that Jim, Nerd, Crossing, and Mr. Papusa, I mean, these are different businesses, but we do have commonalities in a lot of, the way we think and what we believe to be true and what we are doing. I think being able to talk to people in other sectors creates more creative ideas, because I may be just relegated to what I think I should be doing in the fashion industry. But what if those methods in the restaurant or IT world could help me too? So I think it's good that we all are together and we work it out in the mix, in the pot. We pool our knowledge.
Yeah, you cross-pollinate and you share what works. And and there seems to be a commonality around the difficulty of the SBA process, because the small business development centers have coaches. They have all these resources that you can avail yourself of. And so, and I've got access to some of those people in that decision-making tree. So I'm, now I have some marching orders, especially because they're talking about that the next round of PPP might not go through banks, that it would go through the SBA again, like the EIDL program. And so, that is raising some flags for me in terms of, in addition to the takeaway that SparkPoint should get a whole lot more money and be able to, share and grow the program and similar nonprofits. Yeah.
Just because I really love what Jose and Jim say about, because I think Jose got his information and all his support for SparkPoint, and I forgot Jim. I think it's San Pablo.
Yeah, San Pablo EDC. Yeah.
Yeah, they have been instrumental in helping me in more ways than just my business. They helped me with my credit. I mean, I've had a credit coach for 8 years and my credit is amazing, right? So just that type of extensive, I'll call you every 3 months to schedule an appointment. And I'll make sure, just following up with the people, we need that type of help, and I really appreciate them. They have been very instrumental in helping me do a lot of things outside of just business. It's home financials, my own personal financials, home buying, all type of things like that. So yeah, I'm glad to have them. Yeah.
So Kristen, I know we're short on time, but I just wanted to call people's attention to a question from David Green about he's asking do you find that other small businesses are aware of nonprofits and other means of acquiring assistance? And I think that's just been a theme for our presenters, you know, and Jim responded about that, just that it is definitely an issue. I think getting that information out to people about what resources are available and what kind of supports are there and helping bring people together. And I think that comment about having a single location where people could get information, I think all of that is could be really valuable. So.
Well, and I don't know if Donna wants to jump in here because she knows this better, and I know we're at time, but pretty close. But it's so hard to break through to new audiences about what information is available, and I know that that's something that the Workforce Development Board has worked hard to do.
Worked hard, but still struggling. We have the same struggle. I mean, PR is not necessarily always our strength, and finding that one point of contact, that POC is a term we've been using for a while. How do you make that happen? To have one central repository, some backbone system, something that can really be the connector. We've had these conversations for a while. We have not solved that issue, and love all of the thought partners here today to help us continue to have that conversation and figure out ways to support each other in our community through that. So thank you all presenters. You were amazing. Thank you for your time and your insight.
Yes. Definitely. I want to join Donna in that appreciation. And thank you, Steve. I mean, this was great to pull together. We are basically almost at the 10 o'clock hour. I did want to just highlight a couple of things before sending us off on the season of gratitude that we need to do safely and differently than normal. So we are going to have a broadband access webinar. Part of our work through this process is we're going to be doing a number of webinars based on what we're hearing, and some a couple of half-day convenings. So we're going to shoot for December 9th for our first webinar. And Lindy, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that real quick, putting you on the spot.
I think we're going to aim for a 1 o'clock start time. We put time TBD here, but that is what we're aiming for, and that we're hoping to really be able to give people tools and resources they can use quickly, and also to talk about like larger policies that might change, that might make this a little bit better as we move towards more time in this shelter in place or in this new tier.
And we're hoping to include a couple different perspectives in terms of resources that are available, and including hearing from providers. So appreciate that. And then just wanted to call out the next meeting of our task force. Again, we're going to be in the third week, not the fourth week. So Wednesday, December 16th between 9 and 10. And just am grateful for all the engagement. So I really do just want to thank you for all the great information that's in the chat. Keith's talking about the Renaissance Center, the Entrepreneurship Center, and the coaching. And this just speaks to the need to continue to blow up the silos and bring people together. So David, thank you for your offer from the library to be a part of amplifying the resources that are out there. And so just really appreciate it. And I would say among the quotes of the day, Leslie does play very well in the sandbox. So just thank you, Tiffany and Jose and Jim and Steve for really making today important. And you think some of the stuff that needs to happen, but it just is so much more meaningful to hear it from folks who have been experiencing it. So I just want to thank you for sharing your perspectives. And so please email if you have any questions or want to follow up. We'll put this recording up for anyone who wasn't able to join us, or if you want to share this with other folks. But just want to say thanks and have a great day. Grateful for all your engagement. Have a safe Thanksgiving.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, everybody.